Okay, good evening and welcome to Lincoln County Courthouse. This meeting of Lincoln County Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. This meeting is being streamed live, and when adjourned and posted, it'll be available at any time at lincolncountysd.org. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff findings. The applicant will then be asked to explain the proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the County Planning Commission. I will then open the floor to public comment, first for persons in support of the application and then for persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name, address, and speak clearly into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Lastly, decisions on change of zones will be scheduled for an additional public hearing during an upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting. The decision on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. Thank you for your cooperation. We'll first start with roll call. Commissioner Boots?
Here.
Commissioner Jungling?
Here.
Commissioner Otten?
Here.
Commissioner Sweeter?
Here.
Commissioner Green?
Present.
Commissioner Scott is also here. So we'll now approve the meeting minutes from last meeting unless there's any changes. If there isn't, can I get a motion and a second for approval?
So move, Green.
Second, Jungling.
Been moved, properly seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Now we'll go to public input on non-agenda items. So if anybody wants to speak on anything that is not on the agenda, now is the time to do it. No one? Okay, we'll close the floor to that. We'll start with, we need to have an approval of the meeting agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda, Mr. Brown?
No change, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Can we get a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
I'll make the motion for the agenda, Boots.
Second, Sweeter.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Now we'll do public input on non-agenda items. So, still seeing none. I gave everybody a second chance, but, all right, very good. We'll start with you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Toby Brown, representing County Planning. This first item for you this evening is a public hearing. This is an application for a conditional use meant to exceed 1,500 square feet of accessory building area. The applicant for this is Matthew Haugen. He's also the property owner for this property. Subject property is approximately 3,500 feet to the northwest of the city of Harrisburg. This is in the Springdale Estates Addition subdivision. It's just on the corner of County Highway 106 and Minnesota Avenue. Subject property is zoned RR Rural Residential. As I stated, this is a previously approved subdivision within the area. There was some kind of additional lots you can see to the west that were not zoned rural residential, but they were developed essentially through the process of prior to density zoning. So subject property is developed. There is a single-family dwelling on the property as well as an existing accessory building that totals approximately 192 square feet. As you can see, the developments or the lots to the surrounding the property except to the south are all developed as well. So looking at the property, if you look on these pictures that were taken of the property, it'd be the one to the south that would be looking into the direction of where the proposed accessory building is proposed. So the applicant did submit a site plan or a proposed concept plan with the application, identified that he would be constructing a 1,900 square foot accessory building just to the west, kind of I'd say to the little bit to the northwest of the existing house structure. The proposed application does identify that there would be one additional driveway specifically for the garage. This development is under a road district, the Springdale Estates Road District. They have jurisdiction over approving the access point to there. Prior to issuance of a building permit, we would make sure that there is an approved driveway access for that. Otherwise, if there's not, he would have to configure it with the existing site. And so we also did do a staff report of this. Staff did review this application. We did have some discussions with the applicant. identified, as you're aware, there is existing accessory buildings in this development that have received conditional use permits. They range in size from about 5,100 square feet being the largest. This would be just to the east of this particular property, as well as one that would also be approximately 1,856 square feet. So there is a range of accessory buildings, as well as a number of accessory buildings that are below the 1,500 square feet. So staff doesn't feel that this particular application should affect the character of this particular development, since there is existing accessory buildings within that development. So with the application, the applicant did identify that he would be using this for personal storage, primarily a camper, or camper trailer, some other vehicles. There also would be a bathroom and a sink within it, which is typical of accessory buildings of this type of size. So staff did identify that the principal use of this property will continue to be residential. As a proposed condition that we typically put on these is that we would identify that there would be no commercial allowed use within the building. So staff, after review and after discussions with the applicant, does recommend approval of this application to allow 1,900 square feet of additional accessory building space for a total of 2,902 cumulative. That would include the 192 square foot of existing. Staff does recommend the standard conditions that we do recommend on these applications, the 5 conditions that were listed in the staff report. So staff did post the property. The applicant did send notice out of this tonight's public hearing within 500 feet of the adjacent property. As of this public hearing, I don't think we've received any real comments directly with it. There was some neighbors that did call and ask about maybe some details on it, but really no objections were given by those individuals. So with that, the applicant is in attendance this evening. Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you and answer any questions if the board has any at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Brown?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I know we've done a lot of work with ensuring that if it's out in the county, where county has road authority, working with the townships, right? In something like and doing that prior to these meetings, in something like this where Springdale Estates has really that road authority, do we not try to work through some of those details even prior to approving the conditional use permit?
Yeah, we encourage the applicant to visit with them to get a feel for
So
it.
we can ask him if he's having.
Yeah, my understanding is I don't think there is any objection from the road district.
It's interesting on that overhead, I just noticed that there were a couple driveways that went over to the driveway, but some that went straight out to the road, so I didn't know if maybe that was a Springdale Estates deal, or if it was just the building, how they chose to build their own.
Yep.
But, all right.
So, but a great question, because you do recognize that in other applications, we typically put contingent on like township approval of it.
That's going to be my question.
We do that with townships. We don't typically do that with road districts because we don't want to get in between their decision-making process.
I suppose,
Or
yeah.
assist them, I guess, in that process, so.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thanks, Toby.
Yep.
Very good. Any other questions for Mr. Brown? All right, very good.
Thank you.
Toby. We'll now ask the applicant to come forward, please. State your name and address. Tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
I'm Matt Haugen, 47405 Cardinal Place. Just growing family and activities. I've got camper and trailer, and kids will be driving soon, and no place to park. You know, we put a lot of fill dirt on our property, and to build what we have, so we don't have any like flat ground to add anything. So yeah, so basically just a place, you know, yeah, a place to put stuff and whatnot, and yeah, that's what we're doing. Kids do race cars, so you know that's taking up my garage. So yeah, I park outside and scrape windows so their stuff can sit inside. So I would like to get that somewhere so I can park inside.
Very good. Does anyone have a question for the applicant?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Jungling?
I like garages. How big are your sidewalls
Especially
on the
big
building?
ones.
Sidewalls are 14.
Okay, do you plan on a lift and stuff in there?
No,
Or-
no,
Big
we
enough for a
were
camper?
so the building, we had originally had, 12 foot, whatever, standard or 12, and we went to the garage door place to kind of and they said, are you gonna park a camper? And I said, yes, and he said, well, typically you're gonna want 14s, otherwise you're gonna have to take the air out of your tires and maybe just squeak them in to get them inside. So he says, I would highly recommend putting 2 more foot on your door so you can get your camper in. And I said, oh, okay, thanks for the tip, and yeah, so that's how we ended up there.
Yeah, perfect, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for the applicant?
I'll follow up on the one I have
Yeah.
for Toby. Have you talked to the road authority there about the additional driveway?
Not to the actual, you know,
Up to
the
Cardinal?
president, vice president, treasurer, I have not, but, you know, obviously we all live right there, so simple enough.
Okay.
Is that I'm just out of curiosity, is that an application process or is it just?
I don't know what they've done, you know, cause like our neighbor across the street, he built a big one right across the street from me, and he put in a road and a culvert, and it goes to nothing, so I assume that it just goes to his backyard, so, I assume that it's not too much of a big deal,
Yeah.
but I mean,
I was
yeah,
just
I mean,
curious
it would change, it would majorly change how I have to lay things out if I have to try to get
Yep.
to one entry and exit because of water and culverts and ditches and things like that, so, yeah, it would massively change how I need to do all that if I couldn't get a second entrance.
Very good. Any other questions for the applicant?
Are those roads in that road district paved, or are they all gravel?
Yeah.
They
yeah,
are
yeah,
paved?
we have paved them twice.
All right, very good. Anything else? Nope, everybody good? All right, thank you very much.
You bet.
All right, at this time, does anybody want to come forward in support of the application? Okay, seeing none. Were you wanting to say something before
Well,
I thought you, I don't want to cut you off if you want to say
I don't know
something.
if it's support or.
Okay.
I'm not opposed on Todd Hirschhorn, 47403 Cardinal Place, his next door neighbor. The only thing, from our concern, my only concern, I'm not opposed to the project, is just the drainage. It's a little tricky there, and I know Matt's laid some things out, but I just want to make sure that the provision, and the addition doesn't create some back drainage and stuff into our yard, our adjacent yard. That's the only concern
Okay.
that I have. And I think we got it, but just want to make sure everybody knows.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak on the application? Please come forward. All right, seeing none, I think we'll just close the floor to public comment. We'll entertain a motion of approval, then we can have discussion.
Motion to approve Boots.
Second, Green?
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. Does anybody have any comments, questions? No?
No, the only comment I got is, well, I kind of lean towards Jerry. I like garages too, but, and I look at this the same way when I sat on council in T. It's like I would rather have somebody have a building that fits into the area to put stuff in versus having the stuff all outside and it looking kind of cluttered. So that's kind of why I'm usually in favor of something like this.
Oh. Very good. Anybody else? Commissioner Otten?
How do you address the drainage? I'm looking at the 5 conditions, but I don't see anything about drainage.
Yeah, great question. So, so the building permit application will require a flood development permit because of the property. And so through that process, staff will analyze the drainage and the impacts to the surrounding properties. And we've already been in contact with him a little bit of what that's gonna entail with it, but, he'll have to get an engineer involved with the, elevations and that. So yes, it'll be addressed. So, okay,
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you. Anything else? Does anybody else have any comments before we call a roll? No? Okay. Well, that's it. I'll just say this is that's a neighborhood I think we spent about 2 hours on one night with a big shed and so whatever you're doing must be okay because the neighborhood can fill this room. I have seen that, so very good.
And then they just built it attached to the house, so it's really.
So there you go. Oh, shoot. All right, very good. We'll call the roll. Commissioner Boots.
Yes.
Commissioner Jungling.
Yes.
Commissioner Otten.
Yes.
Commissioner Sweeter.
Yes.
Commissioner Green.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott is also a yes. So congratulations, thank you. Okay, Mr. Brown, next item. Oh, we don't have any old business, so we should really do old business before new business, probably.
We'll put that next month.
Yeah, flip that.
So this next item before you is under new business. So the Board of Commissioners has remanded the 4 ordinances that were developed by the Carbon Dioxide Transport and Advisory Storage Committee. If you recall, Commissioner Scott was on a committee in November and December of 2003. That committee met, I believe, over a 6-week period. That committee identified 4 ordinances, what I'll call the framework for 4 ordinances, that addressed all of the different use types that would be allowed for carbon dioxide pipelines. The Board of Commissioners originally remanded that back to you, I think, in February of last year. And then in February of that year, I think last year, we did have a public hearing. The public urged the board to table this item until the referred legislation was voted on by the public that was adopted by the state legislature, as well as some other types of issues. So the Planning Commission did pause, I guess, on recommendation, and then took it up again in November. They sent it to the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners did remand it back. Did have some time to kind of review that meeting, which was on December 24th. And really, out of that meeting, I think the Board of Commissioners said, remanded it back with a couple ideas. So the one idea I would say would be specifically that the definitions on a rezone, and I think that somewhat came up at the public hearing, is that with a rezone, or the option number 4, the rezone being, the definitions would be for the pipeline. And so the question is, do you just want to address above ground facilities for that type of a rezone? So then they wouldn't have what I'll call a strip of zoning across the county. As well as you did recommend on item number 3 that the board take a look at establishing a floor or setback for the non-standard conditional use permit. The only number, and I could be completely wrong, but the only number I've really heard thrown around at the Board of Commissioners would be the 500-foot setback. And so I guess really the Board of Commissioners, and I know Commissioner Otten is here tonight as well, but my understanding with the Board of Commissioners is they do understand the Planning Commission is more experts at this type of the zoning part of this. And so they did remand it back to you to maybe make some changes and recommendations to it. You didn't do that on the original remand that was done in November. And so really tonight staff did put this as a work session agenda to really allow some kind of free-flowing discussion of really what you would like to see, or out of that, if you want to have additional questions that you want to send back to the board through Commissioner Otten as well. And then something else that came up is at the January 14th Board of Commissioners meeting, Commissioner Otten and Commissioner Putnam have developed an ordinance as well. And so that ordinance was not remanded back to you yet, but I have had some discussions with Commissioner Otten and Commissioner Putnam that they are available to maybe talk to you a little bit about what the framework of that ordinance would be as well. So tonight, really, there is no action. It's a work session. If there would be any action, it would be to direct staff to set up a public hearing for next month, for the February meeting, to then give a recommendation back to the Board of Commissioners on the 4 remanded ordinances. And then more than likely, by that time, Commissioner Otten and Commissioner Putnam's ordinance will more than likely be remanded back to the Planning Commission as well. So I know I rambled there, but hopefully that kind of gives a synopsis of where we're at up till tonight. And I think that really just looking for a free-flowing discussion. I know that this has been an ongoing topic for approximately 2 years for the Planning Commission. And I know that we've had some very emotional public hearings and we know that the public wants the county to address something with this. But all along, we've all had the long discussions that we want to make sure we're doing the right thing, that we're doing something that's appropriate for, this is a unique ordinance. You know, like I've told the commissioners, for most ordinances, we can do whatever we want, you know. But this one has some kind of limitations as far as what potentially we're going to be able to accomplish with it. And I'll defer the rest of that to legal at that point in time. But with that, I think that this is a good opportunity for the board to have a good discussion. And I'll turn this back to the chair and answer any questions that you have for staff at this time, so.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
And Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
do you all know Commissioner Putnam?
No, we have not met, yes. Other than I've watched you on YouTube. All right, well, what do we want to talk about?
So, I'll start, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
You know, we've heard a lot of comments, a lot of public comments, Toby. We've had, you know, comments in this forum.
Is this yours?
When we heard this last month, you know, some of the public comment and some of the discussions, thank you, have been regarding, you know, currently, it's just not a permitted use, right? And at least that's how I perceived it, some of the public comment, right? Because our ordinances are currently mute on it, for lack of a better term, because it doesn't address carbon pipelines. So, you know, what impact does that have, you know, in trying to think about the public comment that was given? You know, because I believe there was a specific comment is, hey, don't pass any of these, because, you know, if it's not a permitted use, you know, we'll just deal with that, you know, if it actually comes. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, I don't know if it's been completely consistent, but from a staff perspective, we've consistently said that carbon dioxide pipelines are not a use that's identified within the zoning regulations. We haven't received an application yet to really dig into if there is an area within the zoning ordinance, specifically neighborhood utility facilities and things like that. So I think it's pretty clear that we don't have a regulation for carbon dioxide pipelines. But to go beyond if that fits within any other framework of the ordinance, I don't think we're there yet with that part yet, so, yeah.
Thanks, Toby.
But I think the advisory committee that spent 6 weeks working on this, if you go back and listen to all the testimony and all of the work that committee did, they looked at, you know, and Commissioner Scott was a member of that, Commissioner Sweeter was too, I apologize. Commissioner Sweeter was also part of that too, so, yep. But, as well as citizens, and there was pros and cons on that board as well too. There wasn't just people that were one-sided on it. But I think they really took a deep dive on it, more though than I've seen a lot of people do. And I think it was complicated for them, but out of it, they came up with a recommendation of how does the county want to treat this? You know, regardless of what the use is, if there was any new use, and there's new uses that we're going to have to address. And I know you guys know solar is one of them. And so we're going to have to decide, is solar a permitted use, a permissive use, a conditional use, or a rezone? And that's really where we're kind of at with the zoning part of it, but it gets lost in kind of the details of it. And that's kind of where we're trying to mix structure and the details with it. But I think there's a good framework there. And I pulled up, this is Commissioner Otten's and Commissioner Putnam's proposed ordinance as well too, and as a fourth or fifth option or whatever it might be. So. And I don't know if the public or you were aware either, is that PHMSA did come out with some recommendations, if you're aware, about 2 years ago, that after Sartartia, that they went through the process to take a look at the regulations for carbon dioxide pipelines. And so I don't understand completely the federal process, but I believe they're in the 60-day window of taking public comment on some of their recommendations. And so that's available on the PHMSA website if you want to go take a look at some of those things there. But it's a pretty detailed document that talks about what their recommendations are for improvements to the federal regulations. So.
Very good. Commissioner Junglin?
Mr. Brown, thank you again for all the work you've put into this. I know it's been 2 years worth. So to be clear, we're looking at the 4 ordinances that options that we've had in front of us for a while now. And then we received the fifth one tonight. So what would the option be next month? Would we refer one of them, or do we have to have public input on this fifth one? I was just confused at how
Yeah.
the next steps are.
So the four ordinance have been remanded back to you to really, what my impression is to give a recommendation on changes to those four ordinances, which the previous public hearing in November, we just recommended thumbs up, thumbs down on those kind of a thing. But
Right.
I think the Board of Commissioners is now saying tweak those ordinances if you see one that should be tweaked. Specifically, they talked about the definitions in the option number 4, the rezones. And we talked about that specifically, like, should it just be the pipeline or the above ground structures and those different types of things. The fifth ordinance, we're just kind of, if Commissioner Otten wants to speak more to it, it hasn't been remanded to you yet. More than likely, it probably will be remanded to you. But she just wanted the opportunity to kind of talk about this one with you as well, since it is a work session, so.
So to add on to that, and Toby, I don't think, you're correct. Commissioner Landine questioned the definition. And if you go back and watch our meeting, we specifically had dialogue with you and said, well, what if we just leave it the same? And you said, well, then the whole route of the pipeline would have to get rezoned. And I think everybody was like, okay, then let's just leave it the same. So I don't understand what Commissioner Landine's confusion is on the terminology, because that's the terminology we decided to go with and the terminology that we decided to send up there. I think we were crystal clear on that it would be the whole route of the pipeline, not just the above-ground structures that she's confused about. So I don't, I guess I think that should have been debated as is that's what we sent, that's what we decided on. And if they don't like that terminology, then they want to see it more as an above-ground structures, then say so, right? So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, I think we can discuss it, yeah. But that could be a comment back to the board that you want them to tell you if that's what they want, above ground or below ground or something like that, so yeah. It is complicated to, it wouldn't be a pretty map to have a big purple line going across the entire county, I mean, plus, I mean, there could be national security concerns and there's different types of things that could be complicated with that, but, so.
All above our pay grade.
Yeah, well, and I think the other thing that we think about as staff too is and I know this came up during the wind energy conversion ordinances, is are you doing one application, one public hearing, or are you doing 50 applications and 50 different public hearings? And so from a staff perspective, we would interpret that to mean one public hearing. We certainly wouldn't want multiple public hearings, but we've done that before with the rural water systems where we just listed the parcel ID. We combined it to one public hearing. In fact, we didn't do it for one, and Commissioner Poppins was upset with me at the meeting for that part of it too, but we felt those were different things that were appropriate to have 2 public hearings with it.
And we had that discussion at the last meeting as well, and you explained it to everybody that it would be one conditional use permit for the whole project. And I think people understood that, at least I did, yeah.
One other thing that kind of came up too is that on the original remand, the board asked too for a recommendation on a fee structure too. And so if you recall, in early February when staff presented this, we recommended that you would treat them the same. So we'd treat it $250 for a conditional use permit, $350 for a rezone. If it's multiple properties, it's multiple applications, but they would be combined into one. So, but that's up to you guys again too, so.
The interesting part for me, I know the public talks a lot about safety and things like that. We're more concerned about land uses, zoning, future development within Lincoln County, right? And the hard part for me is when you don't have a map, right? So, we're trying to make these decisions without knowing, where it's actually going to be routed for sure. And ensuring that, if, as Harrisburg wants to grow south, are we doing the right things that allow Harrisburg to keep growing south, right? Versus, so that's kind of, for me, the hard part is, without being able to visualize the potential future impacts, without that, I don't know.
Well, and I think this board has addressed it too, which is what the concern of staff is that a number of the drafts that we've looked at were permitted special uses, which means that setback wasn't going to be that setback, right? And I've always felt, I don't think the public completely understood that, and that was going to be problematic down the road for us when we were addressing those applications. So it's, there's a lot of complexities to it, but I appreciate you guys digging into this issue and taking a look at it, so.
I guess we'll keep digging into it. And, again, on that end, I've got my notes from December that I almost threw away because my head about exploded on Christmas Eve watching the meeting, but they gave me time to calm down.
Yeah.
There were 4 things. We recommended 2 of the 4, so that's what kind of confused me a little bit with throwing all 4 up there. And then the time that's been put into this to turn around and have watched some of the people that were out in the audience when we kind of talked about number 3 that we liked. We knew it wasn't perfect. We knew it might have to be tweaked. The commissioners might have to tweak it. Some shook their head yes, and then right away, well, we need to reprimand it back. It's like, I get this is a very volatile topic, but sooner or later, we are going to have to figure something out, and I think we will, between the public and us and the commissioners, because, again, reading the tea leaves, there's a lot of people now on the federal level that are probably going to be for something like this. And I just kind of scanned Commissioner Otten's here, and it kind of melds a few things together. And again, she can explain it better, but as I've just scanned it, it looks like it takes some good things and basically also make sure it's a conditional use, and that was the one thing I think a lot of us liked the most, that, okay, it's a conditional use, we can get some setbacks and stuff. And again, it would be something that would be on the books that, as I wrote it down, that, the citizens could have a referendum on it and vote on it. So, and I want to make sure that that's something that kind of stays in there so the public does have a say in something, so.
Very
That's it
good.
for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Boots. Anyone else? Questions for Toby, comments about the whole process? I guess we're just open discussion. Anybody? No?
Okay, is there any direction you want to provide for Commissioner Otten to bring back to the rest of the Board of Commissioners? Or-
Does
I'd
anybody have
like to
anything?
have her speak a little bit tell us a little bit about your ordinance, if you would, please.
Doug and I, when we sat and watched all of this before we came on board, and then we watched everything that was going on, we knew had been a yearly process, and you guys have just worked your tails off to get this right. And then all the public comments we listened to, we went back and listened to Commissioner Gibbon, the 6 meetings that he had. We listened to all the public comment. We listened to the commissioners. We especially listened when you were talking about Commissioner Landine, that she didn't like 1 and 2, but she liked 3. And so everybody had there were so many, it made your head explode. So I don't know how you guys did this for a couple years, but it made our brains mush. But when we tried to put it together, I think Doug's comment was, we just need to get this done. And so we tried to take everything that we heard that people actually agreed on and put it together in this. And then the last piece that we got was from Commissioner Aaron's, when he said he talked to Summit, and Summit said that they would accept a 500-foot setback, and we assumed a 4-inch pipe, and then it would be from the property line. So that's what we have in here. So we tried to just make what we heard come together in one ordinance that would hopefully satisfy what people were actually looking for. And then we had to address the idea that, you know, the people would come forward and say, well, we don't want this in Lincoln County. Well, you can't say you can't have this in Lincoln County because the PUC would just override you. You have to have something. And so we wanted to put this in place, and we thought that it would be done Tuesday, so that you guys could actually look at it tonight. So we know that it's coming for you guys later on to look at, but that's how we started. We started looking at why everybody couldn't agree. And it's a huge issue, this whole thing. I mean, it just made our brains mush too. So we tried to put this to where we could try to understand it, to maybe, and then when they said, well, you know, everything goes back to P and Z, but they don't, the commissioners don't give them any kind of agenda of what they want on that, which we didn't think was fair either. So that's why we started this, to see if this would, you know, kind of put those four together and make it work better. So that's how we came up with this. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, very good. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, if I
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Jungling.
Yes, and for that, Commissioner Otten, Putnam, I really appreciate you diving into it, being new, educating yourself, taking the time to look through all the past meetings, watch them, and then put this together. So I really thank you for doing that.
Well, and I think that there was a lot of back and forth about using definitions, and so we tried to put that in here too. And we tried to go to the codes that we could actually use to say, this is what we went, and then when we sent it out, it was either Toby or Drew, that when we had a question on it, do you have any questions on that? Well, we had put down for the notification 10 miles, and which we meant to put in 2 that came from the PUC. So that was changed at the very beginning. So it is the 2 miles notification, not the 10, which was, we were mush by that time. So we went back and it was the PUC that said 2 miles. So that's where we put the 2 miles in.
Was this just you and Commissioner Putnam, or do you guys have any other assistants?
We actually talked to landowners as well, but.
And other counties too.
And other counties, yeah.
Okay.
I think our thing was mainly listening to what happened in here and what happened at the commission meetings, and to try to pull those all together to make some sense, because we couldn't understand all 4 of them that came through either. So we thought, well, we'll just try to make it work and do the best we can to bring that together for maybe a 5th look.
Cool.
That answer your question?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
as I look through here, you know, it goes from section 1 to section 2 to section 3, and then it jumps to section 7. Is this just updating certain parts of our current ordinance, or I just want to make sure I'm not missing something with what I have? Like there's 2 section 3s,
Well, that's a good question.
and maybe it's just certain parts, because one
Yeah.
says 154, 102, and then section 3, 154,
You see that,
138.
Toby, when
So
you scroll down?
Yeah, so until it's been remanded legal, and I'll then take a look at the details of it, yeah.
I just didn't know if
Yep.
we were updating certain parts of the ordinance that already existed, and that's what that was referring to with those sections, or,
Conditional- Oh, yeah, I see what he's saying.
Those should be the ordinance sections.
yeah,
So, yeah, those gotta be cleaned up, yeah.
okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Have you guys, Mr. Meter, has your office looked at this?
This fifth option?
Yeah.
Joe Meter, Civil Deputy State's Attorney. I guess for purposes of today's hearing, yes, we've received it, and like said, Toby and Drew will end up working on that when, as Mr. Brown mentioned, it's likely to be remanded. I guess for purposes of today's hearing, the four in front of you were more of the work section, but ultimately,
Just for discussion.
Just for discussion. I was just curious if you guys had anything to do with the assistance of writing it, or? No. Okay.
Staff does.
What's
and
that?
as mentioned, and I should just step in, I think the small edits that we just mentioned are kind of a perfect example of how Drew and Toby haven't really
Sure.
actually sat down with this yet.
Yep.
And done those small edits that would just make it a little more refined, but yes, we have looked at it. So
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any other questions?
Is this posted online? Since this is a work session, I didn't know if it's actually in the portal for the public meeting or not.
Yeah, so this, I'm pulling this off of the portal from the January 14th meeting of the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, so
The
this is
commission
from that
meeting.
meeting.
From the
Okay.
commission.
Yep.
right.
So it's not posted within our working session for
Correct.
this meeting tonight?
Correct. It has not been remanded back to you yet, so.
Okay.
But we thought it's just an opportunity as a work session that did.
I just wanted to
Drew and I
clarify where you
discussed
were
it.
pulling this from. If people were watching this tonight, then they can know to go to the January 14th meeting and
Yes,
see it.
correct.
So,
Yep.
So for the work section, I see in here, we talked about 500 feet for the setback and whatnot. I know that was a question, item number 3, ordinance number 3, when we're going through those. I mean, would that be something we would ask staff to change, maybe item number 3 to meet a 500-foot setback? And not necessarily mean we go with that or anything, but, make adjustment to that to more match, what's in here. And also, and we've talked about this too, that 500-foot, that's where we give notice typically for any rezone also. That's a good number for a setback or whatnot. So just a thought is a slight modification to number 3.
And Mr. Chair?
Yep.
The 500 was mentioned by Commissioner Aaron's, that he had talked to Summit, and he specifically said, and it's on video, he specifically said that Summit would accept the 500 feet from the property line, not the house,
Yeah, from the property.
which is to us very important.
Then another number for the 500-foot is, like when we rezone something from ag to commercial or whatnot, we ask them to notify people within 500 feet. So it's another, I want to say justification of using the 500-foot.
Another example of
Example.
the precedents that we've set.
500 foot. So between the two, that's why I'd maybe suggest we modify item number 3 or proposed ordinance number 3 to equal that 500 foot.
And then, ultimately, whatever setback then you establish, you should also look at, are we gonna treat this like a CAFO, where we allow them to waiver it or override it, or those different types? Is it a hard setback or a suggested setback? So it's not, once we set the setback, we also gotta talk about those issues too, how you wanna treat that too, so. Because I know some people have said, why don't we treat this like a CAFO and through the same process?
Right.
You bring up an interesting point, because the absolute hardest thing to get permitted in this county currently is a CAFO. And so that's the highest level of standard. And I think that's one of the things that, when we talked about number 3, And by putting that hard floor on it, whatever it was, I guess we were leaving it open for the county commission to have that discussion, but they didn't do it. But whatever that number is, then it gets treated exactly the same way as a CAFO does. And I think that is one of the things that was very attractive about the number 3. And maybe got missed in the shuffle. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I know.
Because if we're gonna.
Go ahead.
Because if we're not gonna do that, and we're just gonna allow a carbon pipeline with, meet your setback, well, then maybe we should revisit CAFOs. Maybe they should just meet a setback and not have to have a public hearing to go along with them, right? So, those are just my thoughts. Go ahead, Mr. Green.
Toby, so with this additional 5th now, if it doesn't get remanded back to us and just say, the commission talked about it and they just want to move forward with it, there's potential, so the way that process would work is they would have to have 2 public hearings, is that right? Because one of the public hearings typically we get from our meeting, and then it goes to the commission for their meeting and public comments. How does it work if just the commission is handling it, if it doesn't get remanded back to us?
So state law requires that the planning commission give a recommendation
Okay, so.
on the ordinance.
So either way, it's coming then.
Well, I'm not legal counsel, but, because we've sent this back a few times, and I don't know if if it stays up there, they can adjust it through 2 public hearings, yes. But more than likely on the 5th option, I'm guessing they'll remand it back on that one, but don't know. It's up to the board. But at some point in time then, so maybe you want to wait have a public hearing until you know what's been remanded back to you and what the direction you want to go with it, so, but if there's any more discussion, certainly we can take input on
Yep.
that, so, yeah.
Yeah, what's everybody's thoughts, or anybody have any more comments they want to share? Or do we want to move forward and handle this item?
One, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as a board here, we made it really clear that public input is very important to us. And again, that's why ordinance 3 and 4 has been our favorite, because it does take public input, and that's where it's Lincoln County, it's the people's land, it's their land, that's important to us. So I think if 5 does come back to us, we definitely should have that public input here for sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Agreed.
All right, very good. I guess unless anybody has any new and marvelous ideas, I guess we're gonna sit and see what happens with this. With Commissioner Otten and Putnam's ordinance.
Chair.
Yeah.
I know we started with this and I'm kind of rolling the math here. If this is reprimanded February, March, so probably sometime in maybe April, we might have something, possibly, if everything comes together. If it's reprimanded, we have the February meeting, move something to the commissioner, so I'm just trying to come up with a timeline in my head where this is at as this all goes forward to make sure we get something on the books.
Yeah, I mean, the timeline is, unless there's special meetings, it would be, your 3rd monthly or your 3rd meeting of the month. And then your recommendation would go to the Board of Commissioners, who has a 1st reading, a 2nd reading. We always do public hearings on their last meeting of the month. So then, if adopted, then it's 20 days referendum period. So it's about 3, we tell people on rezones, change the zones, 3 months to get to that point.
So we're looking maybe April,
Yep, more than likely, yep.
if everything goes well, so.
Yep.
And I think it's been good conversation tonight, because I wanted to learn as much as I can to give my input for next month, whatever happens to us, because I will be out of town and won't be able to be here next month, so I want to have as much.
How are you gonna get nominated chairman?
I see why you're skipping. That's usually, unfortunately, how that works. The guy that's gone, that's what usually happens to us.
That's how it happened last time to me.
Yeah, well, there you go, he can't say no. Okay, well, very good, I guess.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
I know that Doug and I specifically wanted to come and say thank you to each one of you for the work that you've done on this, because this is an incredible amount of work, and I said, and Doug and I agreed that it made our brains mush. And so for you guys to understand this and to come forward with this for the 2 years you guys been working on this, and Toby and his team, we just want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because this is not an easy thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank
Rod.
you for putting this together.
Okay, very good.
I,
I guess that's where we're at.
Yep, okay.
Okay,
Yep.
very good. With that, guys, I think.
On number 2. There's one more item.
What's that?
Planning Commission briefing.
Oh,
So real quick,
Oh, got
is also at the December 24th meeting, the Board of Commissioners unanimously adopted the 2050 Connecting Lincoln County Comprehensive Plan, which kind of got lost and all of that stuff and everything like that. But from a staff perspective, we're pretty happy with that. We're happy with the work that you guys put into it. I know staff dedicated a lot of time to that as well, too. You know, I joked with them that we kind of did like a lot of people that try to go on the cheap, that we're gonna finish the basement and stuff like that with a contractor, so we won't ever do that again. We'll make sure that we get a full plan, but, I think I've just seen the excitement in staff, you know, having a new goal, having a new vision, but I've also seen the excitement in the public. I mean, we've had more engagement with the public, and we'll all call kind of a stale economy right now, but the public is really engaged about, hey, we're excited for what we can invest in Lincoln County. Especially in that planned or planned growth area. So I'm excited to see how it all works out with us, but like I've been telling the commissioners is that we're done thinking and now we gotta start doing. And so there's a number of things in there that, from a staff perspective and from a public perspective, this is a citizen-driven comprehensive plan. We're gonna make sure that it's on the shelf, that it's gonna be followed by staff and by the boards. But there's some things in there, some implementation things that beyond applications that we receive, we also need to start looking at some of those implementation things that can just really make growth and development much better in Lincoln County. But I'm really happy with the comprehensive plan. In fact, you know, I had some meetings with some other areas, Sioux Falls and Harrisburg just adopted some updates and things like that. And when I hear the feedback from their consultants is, hey, we really like what you did, because it's common sense, simple, you know? Sometimes I think we as planners get really complicated in words and phrases and concepts and processes. But that really, and we're hearing that from the public too, is that it's pretty black and white. It's pretty clear from what we'd like to see from, that the county would like to see and that the citizens would like to see too. So beyond excited about that. The second item is Chair talked a little bit about that, is that next month is our elections of officers. So we do elect a chair and a vice chair. I visited with essentially all of you, all said kind of the same thing. I've only heard one person that was really interested in this. All the rest of you kind of said, well, if nobody else wants to do it, I'll do it too. So, but you know, we'll take a look at it for next month to go through that process with you guys too. So, okay.
one question, Toby, on the comprehensive plan. And thanks for everything you and your staff have done to do that. We didn't do anything. You guys put a lot, you had the foresight to see that it needed to happen. And that our other one was not, I guess, not keeping up with where we were at. And so I think just having the vision to start with was awesome. And then to carry through with this it'll make future planning commission boards much easier to make decisions. So with that, now that it's laid out, and I know we've had a lot of discussions about getting to that point, but what are like maybe 5 bullet points you see, you know, the top 5 bullet points moving forward that you think will happen here in the next 6 to 12 months?
So great question. And so I also had a third thing to talk about tonight is, so I'm also going to go to the Board of Commissioners next week to request our annual joint meeting between the Board of Commissioners and the Planning Commission. So at that meeting, staff's worked on kind of what I'll call priority projects for 2025. And so I'll talk more about that at that meeting to get some feedback from you. But we've identified a list of things that we really things that we need to do and kind of proceed with. And I would say part of those staff's already kind of engaged in and kind of going through some of that process too, because I think there's just a new energy once you adopt a new plan. And when you really think about this, a 25-year plan, and I said this not to be morbid, but this might be the only plan that we all work on together, right? Not that we're all gonna die, it's just that this 25 years is a long time for all of us to be engaged in what we're doing. So I'm excited about that part of it, but, well, not to not answer your question, but we'll answer your question in February when
Okay, very
we do
good.
that. So, again, that'd be the goal, is that we'd get a joint session, our annual session with them. And then we've got statistics too that we'll show you with what we've done for permits and applications and things like that too. So kind of a stale economy, but we did really good. I mean, last year, we're pretty steady with the applications and permits and valuation, stuff like that. So it's been a good year, but.
Very good. Any questions, comments for Mr.
Chair?
Brown? Yeah, go ahead.
Not really, just along the lines of a comment, and yeah, I do appreciate everything that Toby and everybody went through and the work and what we did in it. I think it happened to be perfect timing with T doing their comp plan and Harrisburg working on something. It's kind of nice that a lot of between the county and the cities were all working on at the same time, so everybody kind of got on the same page at the same time, so everybody kind of knows, T wants to go this way, Harrisburg wants to go this way when we're looking at that part of the county, so kind of everybody knows where they're at and what will get annexed in and everything, so I think it should make, again, just like you said, this board's job a whole lot easier going forward.
Very good.
Not to interrupt you, Mr. Chair, but what I'd also add to that is we had over 1,000 citizens in this county participate in this process too.
Yeah.
Which if working on any, most people might say, well, that's not much for 70,000 people, but if working on these types of projects,
That's
getting 1,000 people is pretty amazing, really, so-
Well, and if you strip out the municipalities, I mean, it's a very high percentage of people that, are actually governed by the county that participated in this.
Probably over 1%,
Yeah,
so that's good,
yeah, it's awesome.
yep, so,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
And not only with the survey, but a lot of people, you guys, you kept holding these town hall and stakeholder meetings. There was a lot of people that got to meet in person and give their opinion, I thought.
Yeah, we had for stakeholder meetings, and I know you've all probably served on stakeholder committee meetings, it's usually 10, 12 people, but we had over 75 people at those stakeholder meetings. So those were direct invites, so those were good. All of our legislators were there, and they were highly participatory in that process, I think, so, yep.
Good, very good. Thank you, Toby.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Green?
Second, Jungling?
All right, it's been moved, properly seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, guys.